On the line live, we have the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. He's a Republican. Lieutenant Governor, so the decision that you announced a couple weeks ago not to run for governor as an independent, can you walk us through how you came to that conclusion?
Well, it was a tough decision, John. Back when I suspended my campaign for the Republican Party's nomination for governor in late November, I really had no intention of exploring this idea of an independent candidacy for governor. I did talk about wanting to be more of an independent voice on the issues facing the state. And a lot of people picked up on that, assumed I was talking about running for governor as an independent. And then honestly, the outpouring of encouragement and support over the ensuing 3 or 4 months was just incredible. So we did decide to go through a due diligence process of figuring out whether or not it was something that was feasible and whether or not it was something that was desirable. At the end of the day, we decided not to do it, and there were really 3 factors that influenced that decision. One was money. I said from the very beginning that it's not something that I would do unless I thought I had a realistic chance of actually winning the election. I wasn't interested in playing the role of a spoiler of any sort. That's not a proper motivation to run for governor, nor is it my style. And we felt we needed to raise about $10 to $15 million to be able to run a winning campaign for governor as an independent Republican. And I could figure out how we could raise probably half that amount. We may have been able to raise the rest had we got in the campaign and things gone our way. But I just felt it was too big of a risk to take, too big of a risk to ask my donors to take. So that was a factor. Second factor was relationships. Although I'm very concerned about the current direction of the Republican Party in Virginia, and you and I have talked about that in the past, there are a lot of wonderful Republicans out there, people that I dearly love, people who've done a lot for Jean Ann and me over the years, and I just couldn't bring myself to sever those relationships. Those relationships were more important to me than the prospects of being governor. And then finally, and this was a big factor, it was just a personal decision that Jean Ann and I just decided it's not something we wanted to do. And, politics is a lot different today than it was when I got into this business 22 years ago. In many ways, it's a lot more ideologically driven, a lot more hyper-partisan. In many ways, a lot more mean-spirited. I just don't enjoy it as much as I used to. So I just didn't want to do it. And, we just decided the time had come for us to turn the page, look for other ways to serve. And, I want to stress that. I'm not going away. There are lots of ways. I love Virginia. I'm always going to want to serve Virginia, but there are lots of ways that you can serve Virginia and make a difference in your community and your Commonwealth, not just through elected office. So those were all of those reasons were important in the decision-making process, and I think we came to the right decision.
Lieutenant Governor, when do you plan to make an endorsement of the Republican nominee, Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli?
Well, I don't plan on making any endorsements in the campaigns this November. That could change over the course of time. We'll see how the campaign unfolds. But right now, I don't plan on making any endorsements in the campaign. What I've just said to both of the candidates, I've encouraged them to run campaigns that are worthy of Virginia. I hope that they'll talk about the big issues facing our state, offer a positive vision for the future of our state so that voters can assess their relative strengths and weaknesses. And then I've encouraged voters to just take a careful look at these candidates. One of these 2 guys is going to lead Virginia into the future. And at the end of the day, we need to make darn sure that we have a governor who will lead our state in a mainstream way and provide effective and responsible leadership. So, I'll be watching the campaigns in the next few months, as will many Virginians, and we'll see how they unfold. But right now, I don't plan on making any endorsements in the fall campaigns.
Lieutenant Governor, not that you were ostracized by anything but perhaps fringe elements of the party and of conservatives, but do you feel that you've been welcomed back into the fold of the Republican Party of Virginia by both Chairman Pat Mullins and Anthony Reedy?
Well, I don't know who Anthony Reedy is. Who is that?
He's the new executive director that replaced David Rex Rode, who's the campaign manager for Ken Cuccinelli.
I say, well, I don't know Mr. Reedy. As far as Chairman Mullins is concerned, I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard from the Attorney General. Frankly, I haven't heard from any of these folks, which doesn't particularly surprise me. But look, the only heat that I took during this entire process, to be perfectly honest, came from some of the more I'll just call them passionate elements within our party who do represent some of the more extreme views within our party. But as far as mainstream Republicans, people that I've known and worked with for years, I think almost every one of them that I talked to was totally understanding of the position we were in and the situation we were going through. Many of them, frankly, were supportive. I will tell you, I'm not alone in the concerns that I have about the current direction of the Republican Party. There are a lot of other Republican elected officials and party leaders out there who share these exact same concerns. They're just not in a position to voice them. And, one of the, sometimes in life, and I've always believed this, when windows shut, doors open. And, sometimes you're put in positions that you don't want to be put in for a reason. So, at this particular point in time, given the events of the last several months, I think I've been put in a position to do two things. One is to speak out on the need for a more mainstream approach to governing in Virginia, to try to call Virginia and Virginians to a higher purpose of focusing on what's really best for the future of our state. And the other is to speak out candidly to my fellow Republicans and talk about the need to get our party back to a more mainstream approach. Now, these aren't positions I would have ever asked to be put in, but they are positions that I have kind of assumed a role in. They're positions that I'm very comfortable playing because I think these are important discussions that we have as Virginians and as Republicans. And my daddy taught me when I was a little boy, he said sometimes the most significant things you'll accomplish in life are the things that you wouldn't have chosen to do. So this is not the position I would have chosen to be in, but it's the position that I'm in, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to try to get our party back to a more mainstream approach to government and governing, and then also challenge the people of Virginia to make sure that we get our leaders back to a more mainstream approach to government and governing.
And before we get back to more pressing issues concerning the citizens of the Commonwealth, I want you to dispel a rumor. There were many reports that at one time you had met with Terry McAuliffe and that as part of that alleged meeting, you were offered a position in his cabinet if he were elected governor. Can you dispel that or shine some light on it?
Well, I have met with him. I met with him once, probably, 2 or 3 months ago. Also met with Mr. Cuccinelli once, 2 or 3 months ago. But no, he's not offered me any positions in his administration. My intention at this point in time is to go back to the private sector from whence I came. It's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more profitable, and so that's my intention at this point in time. But no, Mr. McAuliffe has not offered me any position in his administration, and I've been very candid. The expertise that I've developed over the last 4 years is in the area of economic development and job creation, and I've been very candid with the media and the candidates in saying that I stand ready to help Mr. McAuliffe or Mr. Cuccinelli with efforts to draft economic development and job creation agendas or efforts to recruit new business, industry, and jobs to Virginia in any way I can, because I don't view economic development and job creation to be a partisan issue.
Thank you for the clarity. John?
Lieutenant Governor, what specific advice do you have, or what do you think Attorney General Cuccinelli has to do in order to win this race?
Well, he has to be viewed as a more mainstream candidate. And look, let me put on my political scientist's hat and kind of give you my feel for where both of these candidates stand and the challenges that they face. On the one hand, with Mr. McAuliffe, I think his challenge is that people don't know him, and he has to define himself in this campaign. People have to get to know who he is and what he's all about. Where does he stand on the important issues facing our state? What's his vision for the future of Virginia? People don't know him, and he needs to define himself. Mr. Cuccinelli's challenge is different. His challenge is that people do know him, and that while people within the Republican Party, by and large, like the Attorney General, if you look at the more moderate and independent voters and you look at the polls, most of those voters right now view him as being too extreme. They view him as being too ideologically driven. They view him as being too confrontational and combative. They view him as being too focused on the incredibly controversial and divisive issues of the day. So his challenge is that he has to redefine himself in the eyes of the voters. If you look at the polls right now, he has to redefine himself as a more mainstream political leader. If you look at the polls right now, basically what you're seeing is that the Republicans are supporting Cuccinelli by and large. The Democrats are supporting McAuliffe. And you have this block of 20 or 25% of more moderate and independent voters who will ultimately determine who win this election. They determine who win every election in Virginia these days.
Right.
In 2009, Governor McDonnell and I got 66% of the independent vote. In last year's election, we only got 44% of the independent vote. To get those independent voters, you can be conservative, but you have to be viewed as a mainstream conservative. If they view you as being too ideologically driven, too combative, too controversial, too divisive, they're not going to support you. So I think his challenge is that he has to redefine himself, and he has to become viewed in the eyes of these more moderate and independent voters as a mainstream political leader and a more mainstream alternative than Mr. McAuliffe. And I think that's where you'll see the battleground of this campaign fought. Now, the Attorney General has to make, there are two challenges he has. Number one is, can he redefine himself given his record as a mainstream political leader? But then second, does he want to do that? Or, is he going to double down on the conservative ideology of the farthest right wings of the Republican Party? And I think that remains to be seen, and I think we'll see that play out over the course of the next 8 months.
Now, if I could ask you to kind of broaden your view as you're in this, as you stated earlier, this very unique position of being able to comment on the GOP as an independent voice. The party as a whole struggling right now with immigration, gay marriage. Where do you think the Republican Party as a whole has to go?
Well, if you look at the report that Chairman Priebus and the RNC released a couple weeks ago, and by the way, I thought it was a fascinating report, one of the most honest and candid assessments of where a party stands that I've ever seen, and I applaud them for having the courage to release that report. It very clearly said that in the minds of these more moderate independent voters right now, our party is viewed as being scary and out of touch. And those aren't my words. Those are the words that were in the RNC report, and I think that is an accurate assessment. When you go around and you talk to these more moderate and independent voters, many of them do view our party as being scary, out of touch, and simply too extreme. The balance that we've got to achieve is how do we stand strong for our conservative principles and values, because we are a conservative party. We're always going to take a conservative approach to government and governing. But how do we stand strong for those principles and values without being scary, out of touch, and extreme in the minds of these more moderate and independent voters? I think, John, it's all about approach. And let me just, we'll tackle a very difficult one for the Republican Party that's created great controversy for us and division with female voters in the past. Let's just tackle the issue of abortion. We are by and large a pro-life party. Now, they're pro-life Republicans, they're pro-choice Republicans, they all need to feel at home in our party, but by and large, the Republican Party is a pro-life party. So how do we stand strong for our pro-life principles and values without being viewed as being scary, out of touch, and too extreme? Well, I think there are ways you do that. For example, instead of focusing on controversial and divisive issues like fetal ultrasound, why aren't we the party that's championing efforts to reduce teen pregnancy in Virginia? Why aren't we the party championing support for crisis pregnancy centers that do so much to help women through unwanted and unintended pregnancies? Why aren't we the party championing adoption as an option to abortion. You know, these are positive pro-life alternatives that would be supported not just by pro-life Virginians, but by most pro-choice Virginians. And at the end of the day, they'd probably do more to reduce the number of abortions being performed in our state than the fetal ultrasound bill will ever do.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's what Bobby Jindal meant a couple months ago when he told the Republican National Committee we have to start being a smart party and we have to stop being the stupid party.
Right.
You know, we got to figure out how to present our conservative principles and values in a positive way that attracts people and it doesn't drive them away.
And a final question, Lieutenant Governor, as it goes to the special session next week, do you see any major hurdles, or is it pretty much smooth sailing for those items on the docket to get through before April 3rd?
Well, I think most of them will get through okay. You know, when you get 140 members of the legislature in town, you never exactly know what's going to happen. But, no, I think the governor's put forth a number of very well-thought-out amendments to important pieces of legislation and, you know, a couple of vetoes. And, you know, we'll win most of them. There may be a couple of them that we don't win, but that's usually the way that it goes. But by and large, you know, there's no good reason why we can't get it all done next Wednesday and move on with life.
Well, you know, just with us three in the room, sometimes we couldn't come to a conclusion either, so I can only imagine how tough it is down there at the State House. We thank you for the time. The news breaker of the day is Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling from the great Commonwealth of Virginia. Sir, do you have a website, Twitter, or Facebook feed you'd like to get out there?
Yeah, you can just you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Just put in Bill Bolling, and you'll find us, and the website's billbolling.com.
Lieutenant Governor, as always, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your candidness. Thank you for your complete answers. We always appreciate it when you're on.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.